Welcome to Prime Suspects for your weekly insider's look behind the counter of Prime Sports. Alongside Adam Bjorn and Prime Sports co-founder Joe Brennan Jr., I'm your host, Matt Landis. Today's topics: the football weekend that was for Prime, OddsJam's big acquisition by Gambling.com, and Prime's upcoming expansion to Kentucky. Diving in with the latest from inside Prime Sports, Adam, I had the privilege of joining you and Scott, aka Vegas Horse Pools, for your show Saturday evening. Had a front row seat to your work as arguably the hottest handicapper in America who isn't selling plays. New Orleans plus 7.5 against Washington comes through comfortably compared to the ride for those sitting on Commanders -7 or Saints +7 during that frantic endgame. The New Orleans cover, one good sign for Prime's weekend. How was the rest of the slate for you?
Not good. The morning started strong. The afternoon was rough. The evening got rougher, and Monday night was even worse. It was all sort of downhill from the beginning. But I guess we saved you some money too on your teaser. Teasing Washington down would have been to -1.5, right, from Saturday night?
I was on the fence all week about teasing Washington down to -1.5, and you inspired me to look the other way. Actually worked the Saints into a 3-team 10-point teaser that came through. So thank you very much for that tip as well.
Yeah, one thing I did notice this week, because there's been conversations about, a lot of these companies talking about the live betting and everything going a lot higher. So just out of curiosity, I looked up what the weekend was like on the football, and we were 80% live in Ohio on in-play. So I've sort of said for a long time that, the pregame numbers don't mean a lot or as much as they used to because you're getting that volume live. New Jersey was still pregame heavy, but overall between the two states, we were pretty much 50-50 on pregame action and live action. So I think the market, the US market, and particularly, knowing historically pre-PASPA, it was generally 80, 85, 90% pregame. But we're starting to see the NFL now and some of these American sports move towards the rest of the world, where I think tennis and European basketball has been 85, 90% live anywhere for 15 years.
All right, well, we will continue to monitor that, and we will move on from a win for those who sold Washington against the spread following Adam's advice, as well as a win for evidently just about everybody who bet into Prime this past weekend, to an even bigger win for the OddsJam team that sold last week. Our water cooler segment, OddsJam has been acquired by Gambling.com in a deal valued at up to $160 million per bettingstartups.com. OddsJam is one of the more popular picks and shovels tools, offering bettors a suite of software to compare odds, find plus EV bets, and arbitrage. And as part of the acquisition announcement, it was revealed OddsJam will generate $26 million in 2024, less than 4 years after launching. Now, a quick aside here, I can't help but kick myself for not jumping at the chance to do some work with them when they approached me in 2021. But setting that aside and getting back to the task at hand, Joe, what are your thoughts on this possibly opening the floodgates for even more tools to enter an already crowded ecosystem?
Well, before we all start calling up our favorite player services or app to see if we could get some advisor equity so that we can cash in on this wave, I think there's a couple of things to really understand here. Gambling.com obviously is under a lot of pressure. We've talked a bit about what's happened to the affiliate industry here in the United States and how it's really taken a kick in the shorts here over the course of the last 2 quarters. So Gambling.com has to make a transformative deal in order to shore up their business here in the US. When you look at the fact that they're funding this deal with really only upfront, it's $80 million. It's worth twice that on the back end through earnouts, which a lot of people will tell you when you see a deal, just only count on getting the front end part because earnouts are typically very tough to meet. But anyway, the way this was financed is about $10 million of Gambling.com stock and then $70 million in debt that they've now taken out in the form of bank loans to do this. So it does kind of show a swing for the fences attitude by Gambling.com. And congratulations to the guys at OddsJam. It'll be interesting to see now that they're going to be part of a publicly traded company, how their money breaks out. Because one of the difficult things to envision is how Gambling.com, which is as an affiliate company, relies on the operators for their revenue source, and combined with an OddsJam, this is all about making players more successful, right? With these tools, positive EV plays, R plays, things like that. Those are in conflict. And I don't imagine that the operators really want better players, right? So, with this kind of dynamic tension, it would be interesting to see just how much of OddsJam's revenue that you mentioned, that $24 million in revenue figure, how much of it is, affiliate base, operator base versus how much is in subscription and services. I think, I've been saying for a long time that this is probably for Wave 2.0 in the US, the area of the industry where innovation can happen. I don't just mean technology innovation. I mean like business plan innovation, revenue innovation, just because there's more freedom here than there is on the operator side or the supplier side. So, we mentioned over the course of the last year, a lot of the smaller operations like Pick the Odds and Dark Horse Odds and others. These player apps, Rhythm is another really good one, that people are doing really good things to make the players better, smarter, sharper. And it would be good if those guys saw a little bit of a halo effect that results from this deal.
And Adam, in past episodes of this show, you've expressed surprise about American bettors' lack of desire for education. So I'm curious for your thoughts regarding OddsJam's numbers now being public and how that may or may not validate that a larger number of bettors are interested in learning how to grind out a profit.
Well, I think, again, it's not necessarily education. They're giving them the answers. And that's what OddsJam's sort of always been about, is they're giving the players the answers. Go bet team A here, go bet team B there, and you make $1 off the $10 spent. I mean, that's just straightforward. Those kind of products have been around for 30 years when sports betting and arbitraging went pre-internet. Those kind of services were getting done out there where you used to get a fax. I remember getting fax of pricing sheets and things like that. So I'd not used the product very much. I'd occasionally jumped onto Alex's thing, maybe Saturday nights when he was on Twitter doing live things like that. It's a really easy business model to do. So it'll be interesting to see who else sort of tries to roll out those things. But I think Joe sort of hit it. This was just a prime example of a public company needing to do something. So they're forced to go and get some debt and go and purchase something to try and, get a headline and keep their stock in play. And that's something that I'd never, ever sort of looked at, years ago previously of how that operated. And now that we're sort of seeing that kind of aspect through this industry and the FanDuel and the DraftKings and these other public companies going up and down, and they're sort of the ones I have on my ticker every day. I've been in and out of a few of them. There's one in particular that just seems to be going down and down. That seems like it has a future in the business and it will turn around. But again, there's a number of these gambling.com per se that we're seen as on a trajectory upwards and are no longer, or they're penny stocks now that I've sort of watched over the years as well. So, again, use the business, used what they know, hopefully made a good score out of it collectively. And, now let's see if they can sort of maintain it as a public company. But I'm all for anybody getting into this space, doing something that they enjoy day in, day out, and then ultimately building something that they can sell. Again, something that I've never looked at before the last couple of years, but now I am invested in some companies and looking at what they're doing and ultimately how I can use my skill set to help them grow as well. And that's ultimately the game we're playing, I guess, at the end of the day. Is it's gambling, and it's whether you're betting on a Monday night football game or you're betting on a CEO and companies and stocks and things like that. It's in the blood for a lot of us, so finding any way possible to do it is the way to go.
All right. And building on all of that, I will go ahead and note that we can't have affiliates or brands offering real-time odds without sportsbooks. So bringing it back to Prime to bookend this week's episode, our look ahead segment, Prime Sports is officially coming to Kentucky. Prime's license in the Bluegrass State was approved last Tuesday and will increase Kentucky's number of online sportsbooks to 9. And Kentucky will become Prime's third state after Ohio and New Jersey. And in a first, per Legal Sports Report, the legendary horse racing venue Churchill Downs will have an online partner in Prime. Guys, I'll kick it off here with the first question on everybody's minds. When will Prime be live in Kentucky? Don't everybody speak at once.
Wow, that's a jump ball nobody wants. I'm going to have to, this one's on you, Maximus.
Yeah, so I'm still sort of trying to work out what was actually approved the other day. I mean, Prime Sports were approved. Planetech usually goes through a process, and this has been a very different process than we've sort of dealt with before, because when we started this, there was a regulator body that was going through the processes, and then somewhere along the way, that regulating body changed and it went to a different path. And we'd sort of had emails go back and forth, sometimes unanswered for months, sometimes the question of where we're at with this process. So this has really been an interesting and long drawn out process. Not that it's hurt us or we've been in any rush per se. Kentucky is purely selfish on my part, hence why we partnered with Churchill Downs, hence why I plan to go to Kentucky and promote this as much as possible as I'm traveling the farms and the wind stars and, Coolmore, etc., and visiting the track occasionally. So I'll be hopefully scooping out some customers at any tracks around Kentucky. But yeah, the other aspect was, and I need to double check my geography, but I believe there's 8 states bordering Kentucky. I believe there's 9 that border Tennessee, which is why those are 2 states that I was looking at when there's states around them that aren't regulated, and looking at border towns and things like that as well. As to when we go live, there's sort of a dilemma right now, and this is where the business aspect comes. Will we make the end of football and Super Bowl? I don't know. We need to find out exactly what we need to do before we could go live. Does that mean we just roll out for March Madness? Does that mean we open up Kentucky Derby week and get some pretty girls heading around the racetrack and, get us some customers per se? Or do we just wait for football season? Within the contract obligations, there's nothing really there determining when we have to open, but it's more now of a business decision. And the fact that it's a really quiet summer, is that something that we just say, okay, we've got what we're doing. We're really working on improving the app, improving the user experience. Do we hold off that and sort of wait a little bit longer? There's no rush on our side, but again, the more states you have open, the more liquidity you have, the more variance of player you have. And obviously, as we saw last week, there's someone in Kentucky that can bet $3 million to win $500,000, and that's a customer I want. So I have to go and, pull that customer out of Circa's hands or whatever we need to do, entice him over. Well, we can do that. But yeah, for me, it's more states, more bettors, more liquidity, and that's ultimately what we're charging for. But as to pinning down a go live date right now, there's still a few more questions and answers. However, I will notice, based on that press release, 8 books in Kentucky, that surprised me when there's 27 skins. Usually those skins, fill up fairly quickly, but we've obviously seen Kentucky potentially opening when a lot of those others were sort of demising. Or is it a reflection on what people and operators think of Kentucky as a state and how much money is available there to be bet? Does that sort of, and I posted it last night, is Kentucky quintessentially the 8 books that are the future of the US betting plus Prime Sports as the 9th? So it was sort of interesting to see that and sort of dive into it a little bit deeper. But yeah, I'm sure on here you'll know it first when we're actually picking down a date to go live.
All right, a lot to unpack there. And as a starting point, if the real-time research I've done is correct, Kentucky borders 7 states. So you were pretty close, Adam,
Okay.
but a lot of crossover opportunity nevertheless. And as I understand it, that was a big part of Prime's rationale for prioritizing states like Ohio and New Jersey when getting off the ground as well. So to that end, Joe, I'd be curious for your thoughts as to what you expect to see in Kentucky, including perhaps any similarities or differences relative to Prime's first 2 states.
I think the Kentucky part, in addition to the obvious attraction of all the farms that the athlete can go to, right? Look, it's a gambling state, and there are a lot of people there. Well, not a lot. There are enough people there that are enormous racing bettors, where it's an opportunity to get them to cross over into sports betting. I think the fact that this happened the week after, the very well publicized nationally $3 million money line bet on my birds with Circa Kentucky, if anything, it probably even raised our interest. Had that not happened, maybe we would be a little more kind of like, oh yeah, let's be rational. Let's plan this out. What's a good opportunity? But then, there's a couple of jamokes in the hollers who are willing to drop 3 sticks on a money line at those short odds. Maybe we should open up our crab shack a little sooner. And the fact that, the bourbon's flowing. If you read Billy Walters' autobiography, it seems like everybody and their brother in Kentucky is a degenerate gambler. It seems like a place that we should try and be sooner rather than later. But one thing Adam touched on, and it's been difficulty in planning around them. And a lot of the early markets have had this to some extent or another. And that is when the states are, passing legislation quickly and then trying to set up their market really quick and their regulators and get their processes in place. so everybody gets off to a fast start. It really does help if you can be there on day one, because you probably get to shortcut an awful lot of stuff, or yada, yada, a lot of stuff. That's not to say that, Kentucky regulators aren't taking their market seriously or anything like that. It's just that in the interim between when the market first opened up and when now Prime was coming to market, Kentucky made the decision to change their regulatory body. And so we thought we got all of our materials in to be considered under the old regulatory regime, but in the end, whatever happened on Kentucky's end, it just didn't happen. And that's why we've had this pretty significant delay. A lot of times, this is why you never want to see the sausage being made at government. And this is one, it's imperfection. But it's good to have that right now in our back pocket. It's good coming on the heels of knowing that there's at least one person there in Kentucky who we might get into a wrestling match with the Circa guys over. But I'll tell you what'll be really interesting to see is this is going to be the first state that has Circa and Prime in it at the same time. And it's not so much like us versus them. I mean, obviously Circa has the advantage. They've been in the business here longer. They have the brand and the casinos back in Las Vegas to leverage off of, plus all the time that they spend on Air and VSIN and the Super Contest. Really sounds like I'm setting them up to be, Goliath here. But it does mean it's a real opportunity for people who are serious about betting to get their ass across state lines there in Kentucky and see how they can leverage between Prime and Circa in that marketplace. So it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic plays itself out, similar to, it's been interesting to see how the ARB dynamic has played itself out in New Jersey between ourselves and sport trading.
And Joe, it's like you're reading my mind, because that's exactly what I wanted to touch on, Kentucky becoming the first state with both Prime and Circa. So building on the thoughts that you just shared, Adam, I'd be curious for any thoughts that you might care to share as well when it comes to operating for the first time alongside another book that offers high and transparent limits for all customers.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, we're of similar nature. I think there'd be opportunities again for arbors between ourselves, and also, to see the dynamic. And I look at the numbers, the volume and things like that in the different states where we operate differently. Nevada's kind of hard to get the actual numbers, but you can sort of get geographically ballpark what their numbers are in Nevada when you look at them in other states. And I haven't honestly looked at Kentucky to see what the numbers have been the last sort of several months, that they're sort of at the bottom of the table in some of those states as well that they're in. So hopefully between the two of us, and, I don't look at any of this stuff as competitors. We're all sort of picking up different players from different spots. Ultimately, I'd like to see both our volumes raise against the DraftKings and the FanDuels, et cetera, and show that we are educating the players that there's other places to shop around, whether it's us or them at the end of the day. But again, like I've seen with Sport Trade in New Jersey, I think there's some opportunities that we'll be able to sort of play amongst ourselves and educate the bettors, and maybe OddsJams will have another spot to be able to find two books that are willing to take a bet and find, some players to get that and educate them so they can find it and make some money. And all in all, at the end of the day, it's just get the doors open, take a bet, same or similar philosophies, and we'll see how it all plays out.
All right, bringing it full circle there with the OddsJam reference as well. And we will go ahead and wrap up on that note. To the audience, whether you're in Prime's existing operating footprint, its soon-to-be expanded footprint, or like me in California in the land of hopes and pipe dreams as far as regulated betting is concerned, thanks as always for making us a part of your week, and we'll catch you next week right back here on Prime Suspects. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Prime Suspects. Register for Prime Sports at primesports.com and download the Prime Sports app. You can follow us on Twitter at Prime Sportsbook, at Joe Brennan Jr., and at Adam Bjorn 2. You must be 21 or over to play on Prime Sports. Always bet responsibly and within your limits. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.